Why be easy when you can just die? Woo! I'm Chewy Mew. Welcome to my channel, but more specifically, welcome to another Chewy Mew video, where today I'm going to be fixing the Toy Biz Marvel Legends Sinister 6 box at Venom because his right shoulder actually broke apart, and so did his waist. I don't remember if I fixed the waist in this, but I know for sure I fixed the shoulder. And so this is kind of a tutorial of how to fix broken shoulder ball joints. It does apply for Hasbro figures and Toy Biz figures. For most of those kind of figures, basically the only difference would be like the size of the pieces that you're using. But yeah, so I'm also doing voiceover because I did this late at night, and I also just wanted to watch videos while doing this instead of just not saying anything and looking at a camera kind of thing, you know? But yeah, so let's hop into this. So the first piece you're going to need is that little lightsaber hilt. I think that's what it's called. And then I just cut a piece and then I super glued it onto the broken peg on his shoulder. And then boom, you would think, you know, you're done and it's fixed. It is loose because the armpit joint is loose, but also it rattles and it doesn't really stay in place. So we're going to have to do more stuff to it. So this thing right here that I'm holding is actually dried acrylic paint. So basically you just take a paint bottle that you would like paint figures with and stuff, and then you just wait for that to dry. And then I just cut it into little pieces. This one is green just because that's what I had. And then you want to cut it to be thin enough just to wrap around like the tip of the lightsaber handle. And you want to take super glue. And there's like stuff stuck to my bottle for some reason. And then you want to just put it around the tip of it. Yeah, and then you just want to like stick the glue, what's it called? The paint, the dried paint piece. Just stick it to it. So you're basically recreating the sort of pin and socket that is inside of the shoulder figures by default. The only difference is this one's going to be squishy, whereas on an actual figure it's hard plastic. But you know, it gets the job done and it works, so that's kind of the main point here. I'm about to make a cut right here. Yeah, there's a cut right here where I just pretty much cut off the tip, because there's some part that went like over top of it. You want it to be like as flat as you can against the figure. And you know, it just takes a lot of work. You need a little bit cut here and there. It takes some precision. And eventually you'll be able to get the size you want. I'm just kind of cutting it so that it's only, yeah, so that's only like around the very tip of it. And then I have sandpaper to sand it down so it's not bumpy at the top. And then you can go ahead and then boom, pop it on together. And there you go. It's still kind of loose though, so that's not the best thing ever. So I'm going to have to keep doing more until eventually I get it tight enough so that it doesn't wiggle around and his arms will like droop down when I'm trying to pose him. So with this part, I kind of just globbed a bunch of dried paint, and sometimes your fingers will get super glued to it, so you just want to, you know, there's not much you can really do to avoid that. And then I'm taking this other tool, so I'm just cutting out like a section of it, because you only want it like around the very like tip of the, like not like on top, but you want it like around the tip. So here I'm cutting parts off so that the entire like lightsaber handle isn't completely covered in the dried paint. I only want like the very tip end of it, because that's what sticks inside of the arm to keep it moving. And I'm just speeding up the footage here, you know, just because. And then you take your scissors again, you want to cut the tip off of it. And then, you know, sometimes it's kind of hard to cut these things because they have glue on them still. I'm not very patient, honestly, and so I don't really wait for the glue to dry. I would suggest if you're doing this, just cut it off as soon as you can. Because what if it dries and then, you know, it ruins it or something. So then I'm just taking sandpaper here, sanding this sucker down here a bit. Yeah, so that's kind of all I can really say. You're just sand it down and just keep getting it right until you do that. You saw me there press the keyboard, because I'm watching a video and there was like a funny clip or whatever, so I just kind of pressed the back a little bit. Yeah, because I'm watching a video right now. I don't remember what I was watching. And then, you can see it's a little bit too tight to put on there. So I'm just like sanding down the edges of it to make it a little bit thinner. It's a very meticulous process of actually being able to get it to stick on. And then I think here I do it. Do I do it? Oh, you see I have to put a lot of force on it. And then I press back again because it's funny video or whatever. And then, is it going? And then bam, yeah, there we go. So I got it on. And then that time I just had glue on my finger. And so then you want to make sure you can hinge the joint there, like the upper arm joint. You want to make sure you can rotate this piece too. And then if you twist it a while, eventually the glue dot, or the dried paint is going to stick out like this. And that's just like excess. And then you can just rip it off. And then you can move it and it's not loose anymore. So it's pretty much tightened. And then you also want to make sure you can just, you know, move all the joints and stuff, stick it on the arm and see if it works. So this Venom has like armpit joints here, but most figures, if they don't have armpit joints, you're basically done at this part, you know. But he has armpit joints, so I have to fix that too because they're also loose. And I think, I don't remember if I actually fixed that joint. I might, but either way, we're going to have to move on to the fixing his ball joint shoulder by, again, taking some more dried paint here. This is a much thinner piece, actually. And so I was actually debating, should I put the glue dot, or should I put the dried paint, messing with that super glue, should I put the dried paint on his armpit joint here, or should I put it on the, like on the armpit joint that's on his shoulder, that's like part of his chest? You see there's like a little holder that hooks into the pin that's on his, like on his shoulders. I just decided to do it this way. I've done, with other figures that I've fixed, I've done it the other way where I super glue it onto his, you can see it looks like he has like little pins sticking out of his shoulder on the piece that's on the left side. I'm just messing around getting stuff here or whatever. Taking a little knife tool so I can, not a knife, like a little pin so I can poke a hole through it. I've actually stabbed myself in the finger a couple times doing this. Other times, like you can see my right finger has like chunks and stuff on it. That's from stabbing myself with this tool multiple times. Yeah, so then I think you want to take scissors here. And I didn't get scissors. Sometimes it looks a little sloppy, but it's okay because it's inside of the figure. Like, you're not going to be seeing this. You know, you could use, like, pink, and you're not going to see it. So you don't have to worry about making this look really nice and clean, because it's going to be inside of a figure, so you don't need to worry of how it looks. You could paint it black if you're crazy, but you really don't have to. I'm going to stop it here and edit more stuff and see what else there is to do, because it's off camera right now. Okay, so I paused for almost nothing, because, like, 3 seconds later, I pretty much finished it. So, yeah, you're pretty much making the joint thicker so that it doesn't wiggle around as much. And then you pick up the piece, you want to stick it on here. Again, just like the shoulder piece, it's going to take trial and error. And then sometimes you're going to get, like, the dried paint sticking out and getting globby here. But, it's not visible once you put it together. And even if it is, you could just, like, paint it up. And then, bang, there you go. The shoulder stays up now. And then I can bend the arm still, separate of like the armpit joint. So that means all the joints are working fine. You want to really make sure before you super glue the toy back together that all of the joints work properly. It does still flop down, but also his arms are heavy too. So then I think I'm gonna end up going here and just adding more stuff to it to both sides. So yeah, it's pretty much the same process. Alright, so now I'm going into weird territory here where I'm actually chopping off a piece of the joint inside the arm. So fun fact, though, the same thing also happens with Hasbro Marvel Legends, where they have a lot of plastic on their shoulder, so the joint arm doesn't move all the way up here. And you see, by me cutting off plastic, his arm moves up a lot higher. I recommend do not do this part with, like, a really nice looking figure, because some figures, it just won't work. I've done it with Hasbro figures, but I've mostly done it with figures like Venom here that are already kind of broken. And you see, his arm goes up a lot higher, because normally it could go up a little past 90 degrees, but then, like, his other arm here, it goes up all the way, like, completely straight up. So that's kind of what I was doing on the other arm, because I already cut plastic here. So yeah, so as far as that goes, it's just stick a knife and kind of just wiggle and cut it through it like I showed there. And then I think I'm pretty much done with this part here, where you stick the arms back on. I think the other arm, the armpit joint was tight on it anyway, so I don't need to worry about it. But here I'm putting it back again, and you just want to test it, make sure it works. Also, like I said, I went back and I put more dried paint on both sides. Pressing the keyboard again. And yeah, so the joint works. You just want to test it around and see how good it works. And you see, it doesn't even move. It just stays perfectly in place. So that's good. It's hard to take it off too now, which is, okay. And so on this side, what am I going to do on this side? Oh yeah, I'm going to do the same thing too. So it's basically the same process as the left. You just want to take glue dots, or not glue dots, dried paint, cut them nice and tiny. Then you want to super glue them inside the joint. Then you just kind of cut around them until they basically fill the place. So it's the same thing on the other side, so I'm just going to speed up the footage here. And then, bam, there you go. So I did the exact same thing that I did on his other side of the body, where I just put paint on it. And you see now, it is a little bit loose, but it's good enough. As long as it's not like wiggling around like a bobblehead, it's pretty much good. And okay, so like I said earlier, sometimes the dried paint will be visible. So here I'm just taking a Sharpie paint marker. It's kind of off camera though, sorry. But yeah, just take a Sharpie paint marker and just kind of Sharpie over it so it's not visible. If it's black, you just use a black marker. But if it's like, depending on what color your figure you're using, you could just like even paint it really. And here there's like some super glue on his shoulders too, so I just painted that to cover it up. And that way, because the green was a little bit visible when you put the torso together, and these are spikes he had on his arm. So the original Venom, if you don't know, he used a body from a saber tooth, and Sabretooth has like spikes on his elbows. And so the Venom figure, since I got it as a kid, I got it new. He came with the spikes on it, and I was like, I don't like these, so I cut them off as a kid. But then a couple months back, a little bit before I actually made this video here, I was like, you know, I kind of like the spikes to make it look more like how he was originally. So I just made clay spikes. I just made spikes out of clay and super glued them to the spot where the clay used to be. So then here I am just repainting the spikes and touching a little bit parts up on the body where there's like some like paint scuffing or, you know, some kind of issue with that. Like you see those pins a little bit grayish, and then, you know, there's that. Unfortunately, it won't be that easy if you're using a figure that's like, say for example, you're fixing like a Green Goblin shoulder. You can't use a black Sharpie marker. You'd have to, I don't know, you'd have to use like regular paint, just paint it normally, or just, you know, leave it like that. Okay, so for this part here, I've already kind of made a video talking about this, and that is Venom's knees are a little bit loose here. So this kind of just basically me fixing up Venom completely. So, or no, actually the leg. I'm gonna fix the knee, I think, later in the video. And so this is how you tighten the ball joints on the legs. You kind of just take glue dots and you just stick them in between the joints, just kind of like wrap them around. I've made a video showing how to tighten Toy Biz ball joints, but I figured I'd just include this in the video too, so you guys can see how it looks to tighten ball joints as well. So it's basically just fixing up this Venom, because he's been through a lot, you know. I got him when I was like 4 years old, and now I'm 21, so he's been through quite a lot of playwear, a lot of crazy stuff. There was for a while where he was my definitive Venom, so he was getting pretty much, you know, like having like a 6-year-old kid play with you as a toy. You're not gonna be doing the best, so it's kind of me just fixing basically everything up here to do with the figure. And for getting glue dots, it's kind of tricky. You see, there's a tool. I was like picking the parts out, and then you can see his knee is loose, but his like ball joint legs, they're not loose anymore. So now they're kind of in place. And so to fix a knee joint, so Venom has really weird looking knees. That's one thing, that his knee joints are kind of funky looking. They're not they don't look like regular knees, but the supply is basically the same. Also, these are different glue dots from the ones I used before. These are like circle shaped. The other ones are like long rectangles, which you know, these ones work too. I got the wrong ones by accident, but they're basically all the same thing. It's just different shape, so you know, it doesn't matter too much. And you see how his knees are really like wacky looking. They don't look like regular Marvel Legends knees, so it's kind of hard getting them in the joints there. And I keep moving it off camera sometimes because I'm trying to like see past the camera. And then you see I got it wedged there in the knee joint. And then you think, yeah, then you want to wrap it around. You want to stick it in between the other knee joint. And then bang, there you go. And then you want to push his leg upwards so that it kind of just gets caught together. So you're basically just like wrapping it in between his top knee joints. And then when you go on the front side, you want to push his knee forward so it gets stuck to it, you know. It takes a little bit of work, but you're kind of just like weaving it in between his joints. And you see now, it is a little bit loose still, but it's not as like floppy as it used to be. And then you have some glue dots stuck in here, so you just want to like, you know, rip them off. You could use your hands, you could use a tool, but yeah. So then you see his knee is still a little bit loose. I have noticed tightening knees with glue dots is like, knees and elbows are really hard, but like ball joint legs and shoulders and, you know, necks and torsos, they're a lot easier to tighten because there's not as much movement. Like in the waist you just rotate 360. You don't have to like, there's not a bunch of wiggling. And you see there, the torso shakes a little bit. So I'm going to take a glue dot and I'm going to tighten the torso joint here as well. So yeah, it's basically the same process. You just take a glue dot, you stretch it out, you stick it in the joint, and then you just wrap it around his waist, like around the pin inside the waist. If they have a ball joint torso, it's basically the same. Basically, any joint that just rotates 360 like this is going to be easy to do. Like, yeah, the only hard one is like elbows and knees and maybe like toes and ankles. Basically, if it's like a hinge, it's hard, but then you see, bang, you just rotate the waist all you want. It's not wiggly anymore. Especially because Venom is like a heavier character. Having a very loose waist is really, really bad for it. But then, bang, there we go. We tightened all the joints up now. I think that's all the joints that are left to tighten. And then I have some like glue stuck to my finger. When I do stuff like this, it does get kind of messy. Like my desk has a mess and stuff, and his neck is kind of loose, which, you know, that's the worst thing when you're working on it. Like, you get everything done and then the neck is loose. It's like, I gotta find a way to fix the neck now too, you know. So I'm actually not going to use glue dots for this. I'm actually going to use dried paint for it. So you want to take this on. You want to put some glue on the paint first, or put some glue on like the plastic joint first. You want to take a little tiny piece. It got stuck to my hand. That was luck there. And then you want to press it on the joint there and wait for it to dry. Or in my case, I'm just going to be crazy and just not even wait for it to dry. And then you just want to cut off the parts. So you see, the joint that I super glued it to is like a circle. So you want to cut off the glue dots to make it into the shape of a circle. So you just take like a tool and then just kind of like dig it out and kind of just kind of carve out the shape you want for it to be. I say that way is easier than just trying to cut a perfect circle and then super gluing it to the joint. Like, just super glue it to the joint and then cut it. I mean, you could do the same thing for like elbows and knees. Like, you could take apart the pins and stuff, but I feel like this is better for a neck because the neck only has like the hinge, you know. Then you want to put some more glue on here. I sometimes get the word glue and glue dot mixed up, but I mean, you see what I mean. I'm putting super glue there. I just use super glue. You can use there's probably other kinds of glue you can use. I just use super glue because it gets the job done, and it's super good. So, and the stupid piece is it's getting stuck to my finger, not to the plastic, which that's sometimes, yeah, see, it just got stuck to my finger there. And then if that happens, you just want to start over. And I still press the keyboard keys. Yeah, this is kind of a hot mess right here, but basically you just want to do the same thing you did to the other. So after about like 6 minutes, no joke, it took me like 6 minutes, I was finally able to get a piece to stay on there because they kept getting super glued to my fingers or to my tool. And you see there, so now I have the pins on both sides. And like how I said earlier, like how on the shoulder, how I just took a Sharpie paint marker and I kind of painted the black on. On this part, you don't need to paint this at all because it's inside the figure, so you won't even see this at all because it's inside of his neck. And now comes the tricky part where you have to test it and see if it works. So you slot it onto the hinge there, slot the neck part on the back part of his body, and then you can see how the head moves perfectly fine. It's also a little bit loose turning left to right just because it's old, but I'm not gonna worry about that part. It's not a big deal. So my general rule is if a figure joint isn't crazy loose like a bobblehead, then it's okay. But if it's like a little loose, as long as the joint doesn't like fall down, like if you make his head look up and he just falls down, that's bad. But if it doesn't do that, then it's okay. And so this part comes with super glue, and this is honestly, this is probably the scariest part of a custom because there's so many moving parts on this. So you want to make sure you get glue only on the parts that don't have joints. Like you see, the way I had to cut this open was I just took like a tool and I just cut the figure open, which I probably should have showed that in the video, but I'm sorry I didn't. It's kind of tricky too. I might make a video of that in the future, how to cut open a figure. And so then you want to make sure, like you see, I put super glue here only on the body parts that don't have like joints. So you don't want to put it on like the shoulder parts because then you'll super glue the shoulders on, And then once you super glue, you just want to hold the figure together for a couple seconds here. And also while you're doing that, I'm trying to put the lid on the super glue here because I don't want my super glue to dry. But make sure, even if before you put your super glue on, you want to make sure you can move all your joints. Like test the waist, test the arm, test the ab crunch, the neck joint. You want to make sure you test all of the figure joints. Those are the wrong joints though. But you want to make sure you test the ab crunch, the waist swivel. You want to make sure the arms move properly. Just move around all of his joints that you super glued to make sure it's not like, oh, I accidentally super glued his head. You want to make sure you can still move all the joints. Sometimes if you super glue it, if you just move the joint really, really fast, you can sometimes avoid that from happening. And so I'm taking it off camera so I can just like press them together with my hands. Sometimes you could do that, just like take it in your hands and just squeeze the joints together. So I'm just holding it there for like a couple seconds. Most times I would say hold it for maybe like 30 seconds. Hold it there in case, just in case the glue comes off or whatever. And then bang. So I'm testing the ab crunch and you see his legs aren't wiggly anymore. And the arms move good, and everything works pretty good on this guy. So, yeah, I'm just kind of moving the joints here, and then, yeah, that's about it for this part here. So, yeah, that's pretty much all for this video, just me showing you guys how to fix, like, a broken ball joint shoulder and how to tighten up some joints here and there. So, yeah, that's all for this video. If you liked it, be sure to let me know, and I will see you guys in the next review. Wow!